Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Have Game Will Travel. I'm your host, Bennett Newsome, also known as Damn It Bennett out there on the internet. As the director of esports growth and development here at Full Sail, I'm super passionate about exploring the diverse world of esports and gaming beyond just skill level. So whether you're a first-time listener or a returning fan, we're thrilled to have you joining us on this virtual journey through the experiences of industry leaders. Let's get ready to engage with our guests and join and learn from their perspective. But remember to submit your questions in the chat. If you have them, we'll feature them on the show and get the answers you're looking for. But sit back, enjoy the ride as we kick off another episode of Have Game Will Travel with our guest, Danielle Rourke. Danielle, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's good. Thank you so much for having me, Bennett.
Absolutely. I'm honored that you're here. And go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your journey here in the space.
Yeah, so obviously, as you can see right underneath my picture, I am Danielle Rourke. I am a gaming culturist, and I have started my consulting company, Gaming Culturist LLC, with really the goal to help educational institutions, organizations, and individuals understand that bringing gaming of any type, whether that's tabletop, card games, video games, esports, into your business, into your classroom, into your organization is a fantastic way to not only engage your clients or your students, but also to just make your brand more memorable and to help understand the way that especially people today just connect. I mean, it's no longer like, oh yeah, let's go to the water cooler and talk about the NBA game. It might be
Right.
let's go to the water cooler and talk about LCS and what happened there.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And or the games that you're playing, right? You know, we had a get together with a bunch of people from Full Sail, and like half of the people there we were all just talking about like Starfield and like where we were in the game, what was happening. Like it's just such a culture like aspect of that of people just wanting to connect on the thing that they're doing, and that just usually happens to be gaming around these parts. So that's always fun.
absolutely. I feel like half the people will be Starfield and half the people will be Baldur's Gate 3,
Yeah.
at least right now.
Or you even get the combo of both sometimes, which is great.
Yes, definitely. So, real quick, prior to opening my own consulting LLC, I actually was a chief technology and innovation strategist at Dell. My main goal was, helping most of the country understand how technology and the special programs that were a part of Dell Technologies could help their educational outcomes, especially in the higher ed world. Really connecting educators and product and services from that particular company. But I had the amazing privilege of being the gaming and esports subject matter expert for our education strategy team as well. And that was really just because I was the biggest geek on the team. Like I was a gamer since I was a little girl. So I understand the world. And, that's what really inspired me to brand my company as
Yeah.
Gaming Culturist, because it's just being a part of the culture. Like it's so much more than just being a player. It's truly a culture that we all belong to.
Absolutely, and that's how I met you, and really, we connected with you at Full Sail through that. Every so often we'd have these meetings, and there would just be tons of people from across the collegiate space. Whether that was other directors of programs, doctors or PhD candidates, like just everybody having a conversation, building that community. It was a really special thing, which was really neat.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, I think you're talking about our esports research collective. So
Correct.
I actually still run that every month. If anybody is interested, they can go out to my website, daniellerourke.com, and there's a spot for research. You can sign up to become a part of that collective. But yeah, it's PhD, doctors, scientists, researchers, even some students, coaches, directors that are all just really passionate about seeing the esports industry continue and grow and be sustainable, and doing that with the help of academically rigorous research. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what really, I mean, you mentioned being a lifelong gamer, growing up playing games. Was that really what sparked your passion for using gaming as a means to connect with communities and enhance education?
100%. I started off playing Tecmo Bowl with my older
Yes.
brother on the NES, if anybody remembers that.
Oh yeah.
Um, I have very vivid memories of wanting to go open my presents on Christmas morning, and we had just gotten the NES, and it included Tecmo Bowl with it. And my brother was like, "No, no, 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 let mom and dad sleep. Like, let's just play."
Yeah.
And I was captivated, like literally from that moment on. And partially because of the fact that my older brother was 11 years older than me, so we
Okay.
didn't have a whole lot in common.
Yeah.
Um, but we could sit down and we could play this game together and have a really great time. And for the rest of our lives, we sat down and we played games together. And that was just one of the things that, despite the age difference, but despite gender difference or where we were in our lives, we could still sit down and play a game and just be right there with each other. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where it started for me. And then my friend group, because I loved games, like I started developing friends once I got into school that were gamers and that played. And then I got into a D&D group and just saw the imagination and the teamwork and the camaraderie that you built out of a collaborative, imaginative game like that.
Yeah.
So then, when I got into school, I noticed, hey, there's a lot of things I'm learning in these games that I'm playing that are relevant in school. And I kept seeing that. Like, even after I had my own son, he was the one that got me into the Assassin's Creed games. And I started watching him play. And he was just playing because they were cool games
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
rest of his friends were playing. But I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're learning about Machiavelli and you're learning about the revolution, and this is insane. So I started getting more into it myself too, just from that aspect of it and seeing all of the educational benefits. They're not super related to gaming, but one thing that I kind of relate it to is, when I was in school, I was never taught about Chernobyl, but I was a huge Stephen King fan. Like, I
Yeah.
loved reading Stephen King books. And I read a Stephen King book and he talked about the history of Chernobyl. And I was like, why wasn't this in school? Why did
Yeah.
I learn this from a fiction book? But that kind of unlocked this thing in my brain where I was like, oh, the fiction that we consume and the games that we play and the media that we consume, that can actually teach us things, and we can build upon that. And so, yeah, I think it snowballed from there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's such an important piece. Like, you think about like the Assassin's Creeds, right? Like, you're still having fun, and there's obviously fiction involved in that game, but there's still a lot that you're taking away from that, that
Mhm.
really can have an impact. Is people really go down into, hey, I actually like this, I want to learn more. I think Ubisoft even made like a whole educational series based off of the same maps and things that they had in those games, that you could just go and just like see different places of the world, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And it's such a win-win for the publishers or for
Hmm.
the, organizations that do that too, because you're providing free content to the educators, to schools, et cetera, that want to be able to build in these things that the students are actually going to pay attention to because they've played it and they think it's
Yep.
fun. But then as a brand and as an identity and, an organization, you're building that lifelong loyalty, like, I loved the Tomb Raider games. I've
Yeah.
played almost every single Tomb
Yeah.
Raider game because I started it when I was a kid. And so you build that lifelong loyal customer and
Hmm.
fanatic when you provide those opportunities to help their education too.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the aspect with Dell. So you were their chief technology and innovation strategist. What did that really consist of?
Yeah, it was a fantastic role. I loved it. There were a small handful of us that all shared that role, but we covered different geographic areas
Okay.
of the United States. So I had the privilege of covering most of the Midwest and the West Coast. So I was born and raised in Kansas, so definitely a Midwest girl at heart. Still say "ope" to this day. Still love putting ranch dressing on everything. And so I loved being able to cover the Midwest because sometimes it gets forgotten by a lot of
Yeah.
companies and organizations because it's just kind of, flyover country. But and then I also covered the West Coast. I live in Colorado now, and so getting to work with all of the schools and universities on the West Coast and seeing kind of the differences between what Midwest needs were and West Coast needs were. But what our primary goals were, I like to say from a 50,000-foot view, was being networkers and connectors and strategists and translators sometimes between our educational customers and a company that is, looking to sell products, sell services, campuses, et cetera. So many times there is just this division. There's this
Yeah.
fundamental difference between what their goals are that it's hard to communicate. And so our team of education strategists and chief technologists was to help break down those barriers and to say, like, okay, sales teams at a hardware manufacturer. Here's what FERPA means. Here's why you would want to talk to a provost. This is what they do.
Yeah.
And you have to change your approach. You can't come in, guns blazing and say, am I going to get you a deal on these 5,000 computers? You have to say, these 5,000 computers are going to help you in your educational outcomes in XYZ, and it's going to save the university money while allowing you to do more research. So we were able to help kind of demystify the world of
Right.
education for hardware manufacturer. And then on the flip side, we were able to go out to all of these educators that were formerly our colleagues, because all of us that worked in this role, we previously had worked in education in
Yeah.
some form or fashion. Principals, teachers, superintendents, learning consultants. We had a PhD chemist. We had an online learning director. We had a CISO and a CTO. So we all had a diverse background
Yeah.
in education. And so we were able to kind of help unlock the secrets from both sides. So we could go back to these colleagues that we had worked with in the educational world and say, all right, I know you've got these research projects. Did you know that Dell has a program that you can get support for writing grants? And that can help your IT department, because whereas, a lot of colleges and universities have grants offices, they don't necessarily give a lot of that love to the IT department. So, that was a way that that particular company could help support the educational mission in finding those funds to upgrade
Yeah.
things and et cetera. So, we also hosted special programs like Girls Who Game, getting 4th through 8th grade girls interested in STEM and STEAM by getting them into Minecraft and showing them that it's okay to be a girl that loves gaming
Yeah.
and that participates with other girls. So it was just such a wonderful job. And then being able to be that gaming and esports subject matter expert really spoke to my heart. It was kind of like having a second job, but I loved it. And I was so passionate about it because I knew what it had done for me in my own life. And I knew the connections that it made. And I knew all of the opportunities that it gave me, both, in school, in a professional world, and just in a community. And so being able to help other schools and being able to help other communities get together and get some of those resources that maybe they didn't realize were available from this large company, that was just super fulfilling for me and incredibly passionate work.
Yeah. And you also had a background in education. You want to talk a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, before I worked at Dell, I was actually an IT director at the University of Colorado Boulder. So go Buffs. Um, but it was great. I managed a team of business analysts, solution architects, developers that all worked on really trying to help make the programs and the systems that the students used better and easier. Because for example, one of the things my team worked on was this student portal. We called it our Buff portal. The mascot for CU Boulder is the Buffaloes, if anybody didn't know. So we called it the Buff portal. And as they were going through and designing that, we actually asked the students to come in and be a part of the design work and be a part of the research. And through that inclusion of the students, we found out, like, we were asking a freshman student to log into over 95 different systems just in their freshman year.
Yeah.
We were like, that's insane. No wonder they hate this, And so how could we make it easier? How could we put all of those things in one spot and make API connections on the back end and, make pass-through launchers that would take it to, okay, maybe they had to log into 10 things, but not 90. So that was incredibly fulfilling for me. I also managed the team of experts that helped launch some really innovative online programs, like a Master of Science of Engineering, Electrical Engineering, and a Master of Science of Data Science in partnership with Coursera. So for those of you that don't know, Coursera is a MOOC platform that is, delivering content and learning into bite-sized chunks. So it's a little bit easier to get down. It's a little bit easier to
Right.
understand. It's a little bit easier to accomplish. But we wanted to, as a school, we wanted to be innovative, and we wanted to provide that just-in-time learning and training to people who were job professionals or people who lived in Thailand and couldn't make it to the CU Boulder campus. And so utilizing that Coursera platform was a way to do that and to give them some of those opportunities, but it required a lot of back-end technological changes, because we were doing performance-based admissions instead of, filling out an application and submitting your GRE scores. We were doing, advanced payment instead of getting an invoice after the fact. So it required us to rethink kind of the traditional systems of higher education. So incredibly passionate about that as well, because I would not be where I am today without having the opportunity to attend online classes,
Yeah.
which is also one of the things I love about Full Sail, is that you guys offer so many of your programs and your learning opportunities online. So just because I can't necessarily live in Florida
Right.
doesn't mean I can't get the incredible education you offer. So kudos to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I love that kind of connection between the two for you. You experienced a lot of things in that sector, in the education sector. And then as you transition over to Dell, you were able to kind of bring not only all that experience with you, but some of the pitfalls that you had on that side to how to connect them together, which I'm sure was a great opportunity for you and Dell and all of that combined. And I guess before we move on, we do have our first question from the chat. It comes from Jacob is Nachos, all the way from Ocean View, California. He says, what are some of the biggest successes you've seen within Scholastic Esports in the past few years?
Ooh, yeah, that's challenging because there've been a lot actually. Yes, 100% I am biased, but I believe that Scholastic Esports is what's going to save the esports industry. In fact, I was speaking with a couple of classes from Syracuse University earlier today, and I was telling them that. I said, thank you, college students, because you are literally carrying the esports industry on your back right now. There have been so many challenges. I think everybody's kind of heard the term esports winter thrown
Mm-hmm.
around for the professional orgs right now. Some of the things that the professional teams are going through, some of the challenges they've faced. And there was such a hype machine around esports for a few years, and everybody was making a startup and the money was flowing and it was
Yep.
great. But when you go out and you look at actually the statistics and the data around where was the money coming from for all of that, it was very disproportionately for sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not sustainable. That's not a sustainable business model, especially when the market goes down or has those fluctuations. And so we've seen so many of the startups and the professional orgs struggling because maybe they didn't quite have the infrastructure built out in their
Mm-hmm.
business plan, to weather those severe market fluctuations and to weather so many of the endemic and non-endemic sponsors like tightening their belts and saying, hey, we can't sponsor this year. And oh my gosh, that was their entire business
Yeah.
plan for that particular company. So I 100% feel like Scholastic Esports is the, hey, don't worry about this, we got you
Yep.
kind of person
Yep.
that's carrying the industry through. So the fact that so many colleges and universities are really stepping up their game, getting more support for their students and those organizations, I think is fantastic. I also think that more and more of the K-12s starting to understand that, oh, this is great for the community. This gets students who weren't involved in anything else on campus or in the school district engaged and helps them find their tribe and helps them find a niche that they feel comfortable in. Like they're realizing all of these benefits. It's not just about like, why would I want to pay my tax money to have these kids go play games? It's so much
Mm-hmm.
more than that. And there's so many more benefits, both in professional and just social competencies that happen. I think it's incredible that we're seeing more support. We're seeing more labs being opened. We're seeing more schools come out in like actual full stated support as opposed to just oh yeah, that's cool, we'll let you do that, just don't make too much of a ruckus kind of
Right.
thing. So I think that's so important. And then the other thing that I do want to mention is I'm a firm believer in the fact that schools are where esports needs to start, because there can be so much toxicity in the industry. There
Mm-hmm.
can be so many bad things that come out of those unregulated and unwatched lobbies that if you have teachers and coaches and people who have been trained in social and emotional learning and emotional intelligence and how to be not just a passive bystander, but an active
Right.
bystander and call things out when you see them that are wrong or that are toxic, like being able to give students and young people that structure and kind of that framework to say, like, hey, we're an organization and this is what we will accept. This is what is not acceptable in our community. We want to make it inclusive for all. We want to make it a safe space
Yeah.
for everyone. That is so powerful. If you give that to people when they're young and they're just starting their gaming journey, and then they can carry that with them into, a collegiate or high school career or into a professional career or even just out into the industry and say, like, no, that's not what I was raised with, and that's not
Yep.
what I'm going to
Yep.
allow in my version of this industry.
And that's starting on the ground floor, you know what I mean? Like that's the expectation is huge. I couldn't agree with more with that, more. And something that I've always kind of said from a the collegiate standpoint is that what is happening at the high school and middle school levels is super important, and the foundation of that is critical to what happens in the future for collegiate as well, because for the most part, most kids that are coming into the collegiate space, they haven't had a coach before. They've maybe played with their friends, and that's really the extent of it. But they've never been coached, and that is a huge difference for a lot of kids, right? And so if they're getting that training as a student in middle school or high school, they're able to build on top of that, and they're able to come to the collegiate scene with already so many important skills that they've learned along the way that have really helped shape them as athletes. And I think that's going to be the really big and exciting time, not only for collegiate esports but for all of it, is that those kids are going to continue to grow and follow that path. And we'll see some of the best student athletes that we've ever had in a few years, because obviously in that scholastic space, it's already started, right? There's already institutions that are taking that and focusing on that. So it's definitely going to be an exciting time over the next couple of years. But I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more on that, for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, it's just so important. And I won't get on my high horse about research, but I am such a huge believer in research and the fact that we need it. Dr. Joanne Donahue from NYIT, she once said, I feel like we are right now in terms of esports research where like traditional sports research was in the early 70s into the 80s, where it was like, oh, hey, maybe concussions are bad. Like,
Right.
let's get that actual documented, academically rigorous research out there so that then we can make good choices about how we're having these student athletes compete and what kind of breaks do they need. And let's make it so that it's more sustainable so that these athletes are not having to retire at 23 because of severe stress and
Right.
PTSD and
Yeah.
overuse injuries,
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'll back off, but
I
research is
agree.
needed.
Research is great, and I think that's going to help continue to support that. But for you, as someone that's involved in both, the gaming side and the education side, how do you see like the intersection of these two worlds evolving in the future?
Um, I just see them getting closer and closer to the point where, personally, I feel like they're already blending,
Yeah.
where it's not as big of a leap to say, like, hey, we're going to sit down in the classroom, like what we were just talking about, have your history classroom sit down and play some chapters from Assassin's Creed
Right.
and have them be immersed in it, have them be talking to these people from history and these figures that they've read about in these dull boring history books or they've seen on screen, maybe with an interesting actor, but have them actually play it out and have them experience it and have them have to ask questions and have reactions and things like that. So I think we're well on the way to the really blending and merging of that happening. Shout out to Epic Games as well,
Yeah.
and like the work that Steve Isaacs is doing over there, but just making those tools accessible to schools and to students and to teachers and bringing those kind of tools where students can truly unleash their creativity and they can expand on what they're learning out of the textbook and in the classroom and make it come alive. That's a whole different level of learning. That is true, that's not rote memorization, and that's not even acting it out in a play. Like, that is creation.
Yeah.
And that is an incredible way for students to learn and really solidify what they're learning.
Awesome. And we do have another question from the chat. It comes from Infiltrating Mom, and she asks, where would be the best place to start when looking for panelists to talk about K-12 esports for parents? Currently looking for my next event.
Well, I might be available. No, but definitely look out there on LinkedIn and on Twitter. There are a ton of K-12 esports people out there, like Julie Mavergeorge. You've also got, actually, I think I see her in the chat here, Jackie Lamb. So many amazing people that are just so incredibly well versed, have been a part of this for so long. Take a look at some of the esports conferences like Esports Next or NACE or NACAD or etc. Like, look at the speakers that have gone out there and been involved in that and reach out to them. That's one of the amazing things to me about the esports industry and ecosystem, is that we all just want to help.
Yeah.
Like, this is passion for most of us. And we see how it helps benefit the students, and we see how it helps bring kids together and make kids feel like they have a place where maybe they didn't before. And that is, worth so much gold in how we approach things. So most of the people that speak on those panels, like, they are going to be willing to talk to you and to say, like, yeah, how can I help? What can I do? And, maybe not all of the schedules will align, but you can definitely make those connections with them. So I would look out at those resources. Just reach out, even especially too, if you know some people in high ed, reach out to them and say, hey, who do you know in the K-12 space? Because a lot of us are connected with that passion for education and that passion for seeing students succeed. We know each other. So reach out to us and ask for people who are good examples and people that we strongly believe feel that have the right intentions.
Absolutely. I'll also nominate Jackie for that.
Yeah.
Right there in chat, you guys can connect and get a conversation started. But moving kind of forward here a little bit, you have hosted some virtual esports conferences this past summer and before. What were some of your kind of main takeaways from those events?
Yeah. So, like, specifically, we did in 2020 and 2021 during the pandemic. Everybody had a little bit of time on their hands.
Just a little bit, no big deal.
So we were like, how can we help educators and how can we help them understand how to bring gaming and esports in? And so, my former colleague, Katina Popolkas, she has a one-woman army in Canada. Like, she is also a great K-12 speaker if you need somebody. But she had this idea. She was like, why don't we do a virtual conference? Why don't we, make this available to people? Why don't we create a Google website and get these speakers from the world of esports in and have them share their knowledge and, maybe give out business plan templates and, just make this resource for everybody who's, stuck at home. Why is this such a good thing to explore? Why is this a good use of this time? And so it was incredible. We had like Dr. Sean Burney from St. Clair College up in Canada was a speaker. We had Dr. Joey Gariziak, who just recently moved over to Syracuse University, as a speaker. And they all brought their own flavors of, this is why we did it, or this is how we convinced administrators how to do it, or, that it was a good idea. These are the steps that we took. This is how we integrated it into our curriculum or made it an interdisciplinary effort with different departments on our college campus, like get the media and graphic design department involved to make your logos or to make your screen wipes on Twitch, or get the writers to do the scripts for the journalism students who are actually doing the shoutcasting or the commentating. So many different ways to bring those communities together and to just share the ideas. So many times you hear the rising tide lifts all boats, and that's, again, a great thing about the educational esports community, is that everyone just wants to see it succeed and everyone is willing to help each other. And very rarely, possibly never, have I ever seen, wow, that sounds like a drinking game. But have I ever seen an educator or someone in the educational esports space say, no, I don't want to tell you that because
Yeah.
that'll affect me and
Yeah.
my portion of it. Everybody is just so willing to
Mm-hmm.
help. And being able to have those, like those 2 virtual summer conferences, have the recordings out there. There were tons of times when I would point people back. I would have conversations years after and say, go check out this speech from Sean Burney on
Yeah.
how they did it at St. Clair, or go check out this coverage of, that Dr. Seth Jenny did of his research around the gaming programs globally. It was just such a great resource to have to give other people and to do it asynchronously because not everybody can be together at the same time. So
Right.
those were fantastic times. And, I've loved all the virtual webinars that I've been able to do for a lot of the same reasons too.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, we have had such a crazy journey from getting started and moving into what Full Sail is now, but that wouldn't have been able to be possible if it wasn't for other institutions that were like, hey, come over here, like let's talk, and just had a lot of conversations, and we've always then really pivoted to turn that around and say, hey, we're open here, let's help, and we may be unique as an institution as Full Sail is, but hey, let us connect you with another institution that is very similar to you, and they can also share these things with you. And I think that's such an important part of the educational spaces. Everybody wants this to be successful. Everybody's working
Mhm.
together for the most part. Obviously, when it comes to competition, there may be a little different.
Yeah.
But as far as success as esports, everybody's really working together. And I think just reaching out and asking, a big part of my job recently has been just talking with other schools and just like really kind of helping them get off the ground and pointing them in the right direction when it comes to just starting their programs. And I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle is doing that. So I'm glad that you're helping them. You're pointing in directions for people to find these resources because it's such an important part, of that journey and everyone building together.
Absolutely. I always tell people, I'm like, go up and ask any of these organizers or any of these educators that are at events, what they did and how they did it. Just don't ask them in the middle of a match.
Right.
You're probably not going to get the response you want.
I like that. Now, you mentioned earlier your involvement with Girls Who Game. How does mentorship in gaming, benefit young individuals, specifically girls, and what were some of maybe like the challenges that you encountered along the way, with your involvement in that?
Yeah, it's so important. It is definitely another passion area of mine. And part of it's just because of my experience when I was growing up. I mentioned that I learned gaming and got into gaming from my brother because, yes, we got that Christmas Eve, like our big present for the both of us was a Nintendo. But it was football games, and my brother was a football player. And, there were no games for somebody my age that were
Right.
bought. So, it's so often and so historical that it was, oh, gaming is for boys,
Yep.
and that's just the way it is. And when you look at the statistics, like half of the population, which are female, are gamers
Yeah.
too. So it is so crazy to me and so ridiculous to still have that stereotype and that stigma around. And I know when I was a little girl, I would have loved to have a friend or to have a community that loved gaming the way I did and that wanted to do some LAN parties. Every single LAN party I was a part of until I was an adult was with boys.
Yeah.
And, it would have been so great to have some of my own community
Mm-hmm.
be there with me. Like nothing against boys. Like I have a ton of friends who are guys, and guys are great, but it's so easy too for guys to forget that, oh, she doesn't have anybody that she can just kind of hang around with and has some of those same, you know, gender specific experiences like I do in
Mm-hmm.
this world. And, I'm definitely all about inclusion and diversity, but sometimes it is just really nice to have a conversation with another girl. And so I would have loved to have that when I was a kid and when I was in gaming. So being able to provide that to some of these girls and making sure that they have other girls that they can talk with, that they can chat with, that they can giggle with, and not maybe, be so worried about how they're going to be perceived. That's something that I wanted desperately when I was a kid and when I was in gaming as a young person. And so if I can help that in any way, that's just fantastic to me. And I'm also a huge believer in that you can't be what you can't see.
Yep.
So if you don't have those role models, if you don't have women in gaming and technology, people who look like you that are Black, brown, indigenous, if you're not seeing those people be involved in the things that you like,
Yeah.
then you're going to start to form that just unconscious opinion or subconscious opinion even that, oh, that's not a place for me because there's nobody else that looks like me in that
Yep.
world. And so that's why I loved Girls Who Game and the mentorship aspect of it, because we had so many different women with different backgrounds. We had so many different male identifying allies that came in. There were a bunch of times that I would go and have, an online discussion with a Girls Who Game club across the country. And I would have some of the male allies that were involved in Girls Who Game come on and speak with me and talk about, I have daughters,
Yeah.
or I really try to encourage getting women on my team because we need more women in technology. That is so powerful and so impactful to say, like, we're all in this together. Like, we're
Mhm.
working together. It's not an us versus them thing. This is a collaborative community, and we're all really tied together by the passion of fun and gaming and learning and just being a community. So it's incredibly important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I had my nieces over, and we were a couple years ago now, but we were watching Armada, our Overwatch team, play, and our captain Pepto Abysmal. She was on camera, and my niece just said, "Wait, what's happened? What is this?" I'm like, "Well, this is our esports team. They're playing." Wait, she can do that? I was like, "Of course she can do that!" Like, and it
Yes.
really changed it for her.
Yes.
Like, it opened the door, I think, and she started really getting way more into gaming and not it almost not being afraid to like gaming, and I thought that was super important, and that representation does really matter, when especially coming from a white dude, right? Like, it's just like you have to pay attention to those things, and it's such an important thing for other people to exist in that. So definitely a very important piece of the puzzle, and I think that obviously there's a big role to play when it comes in promoting diversity and inclusion, and how do you feel like that kind of reflects in the education and gaming communities, that esports can be that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I love about esports is that literally anyone can play. You have games that are have the audio cues for gamers with a visual
Yep.
impairment. You have the accessibility controllers from Xbox and other companies that allow, people who maybe don't have the same style limbs as
Yeah.
others to be able to play. You don't have to be the tallest kid in your class. You don't have to be the strongest person out on the field. You don't have to have those differentiating barriers that sometimes come with traditional and physical based sports or participation. And it's fun. Like,
Yeah.
everybody has fun at it. And there are so many different opportunities. I was just actually talking with this some folks that there's so many different genres of esports. And it's not, I hate when sometimes when people are like, oh, it's esports and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not it. It's esports and traditional sports, and then you have MOBAs and fighting games and card games and et cetera. And then you have baseball and basketball and track and et cetera. Like, there are different types of play and different types of experiences for different skill sets. And so I think that kind of diversity is important too, that it's not just your physical attributes, it's not just your gender attributes or identities. It's,
Right.
all of it can come into play, and everybody can play. Everybody can be a part of it. And I think, with a lot of the traditional sports, nothing against basketball, but I'm
Yep.
5'3". I was never going to be a star
Same.
basketball player, no matter how much I practiced,
Yep. Yep.
it just, there are physical limitations in some of the more traditional games or in some of the more, traditional avenues of being a part of a community. And esports is one of those amazing communities that just breaks down those barriers. And you don't have to worry about being the best or being the brightest or the tallest or the strongest. Like, you can just be, and you
Yeah.
can just be a part, and you can work on those skills. And esports requires skills that can be learned and that don't have to be like, physically inherited.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I think a big part of this too is everybody just wants to belong. Everyone wants to be part of it. And I think esports gives a lot of opportunity to that. And gaming as a whole, really opens that door as well. So,
Absolutely. One of my favorite stories, if you don't mind,
yeah,
there
go
was,
for it.
I actually heard, I did not have the privilege to be a part of that group, but I heard a story about one of the esports teams that, they were competing, they were recruiting, and one of the people that signed up and joined and became a part of the team, English was their second language, and their first language was Mandarin Chinese. And it was something that had kind of set them apart in other areas of life, especially their school
Yeah.
experience, like, perhaps being bullied, perhaps being singled out, not included, etc. But the esports team figured out that, oh, this is a strength.
Yeah.
This is not any kind of a handicap or anything bad. This is a strength and something that we have to our advantage, because that student who spoke Mandarin Chinese was able to teach calls and playouts and different strategies
Mm-hmm.
in those language, in that language, in those words, to their teammates. And they were able to communicate during that live gameplay in Mandarin, and the other team had literally no idea what
Yeah.
they were saying. And so, it was a way that, I mean, talk about how included that would make you feel as a student, to have something that made you unique and set you apart, and sometimes caused perhaps grief or struggle in other areas of your life, but to have that be one of the things that made you special
Yeah.
as a part of this community, and to have it be valued. That's one of my favorite stories in talking about how, esports and gaming and being a part of these communities can just create so many opportunities for inclusion that maybe weren't there before.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great story. We do have another question from the chat. This comes from Offbeat GNU. How would you handle parents thinking video games are bad and refuse to let their kids even try them?
Yeah. Have you played one?
Yeah.
That's what I would probably start off with, and then I would get into the real answer. But I think that it's when you show them the data and when you show them an event. I actually mentioned this to someone else too recently, that I have never seen a person that I told, like, hey, go to a live event,
Yeah.
actually just observe it, that has come back and been like, yeah, I don't see what the big deal is. Like, no, that was terrible. Every single time I've ever spoken with someone who was either neutral or against gaming and esports, and they go to a live event and they see the smile on their kid's face, and they see how engaged they are, they see how passionate they are, they see them communicating. There's a lot of amazing things that happen, especially with students that are on the spectrum in gaming and as a part of esports. They see a communication happen that they didn't before, and that they didn't maybe even know was possible from their particular child. And it's just such a transformative experience, and seeing them through different glasses. I would highly say, like, go watch your child compete, go watch
Yeah.
your child play, get involved and ask them what they're doing and why they love it and what they're learning, or something that has helped them or made them feel good about it. Like, be that involved parent that takes an active role in that. And if that doesn't convince them, then I always move on to the data as well. I'm like, go take a look at the data, the viewership numbers. There are over, in 2020 alone, there
Yep.
were over 400 million people engaging and watching esports content. And that's pretty much more than most of traditional sports. That's
Yep.
more than a lot of the primetime TV shows get. So this is something that they're already engaged in and they're watching. wouldn't it be better to support them? And wouldn't it be better to be an active part and to understand why they like it and are fascinated by it? And then, I also show them the jobs. Jobs are actually a huge motivator for parents and administrators and teachers, especially that don't get it or that think it's just gaming or think it's an antisocial activity. Like when you go out and you say, hey, go to LinkedIn, go to the job search bar, type in esports,
Yeah.
tell me what you see. They're going to see dozens, if not hundreds, of jobs, and they're going to see salary ranges that are often approaching at or exceeding $100,000. They're going to see big name companies like Blizzard and Riot and Red Bull and, all of these companies that they can be like, wow, that's actually a real professional company
Yeah.
that I've heard of before and, consume products from. That usually changes their mind once they understand that, okay, there is a future here. And it's not just, being a professional gamer and it's not just being a computer programmer. And they are learning things and they are having engagement with other people and being social.
Hmm.
Usually that will change their mind a little bit.
And how do you feel like bridging that generational gap works with gaming? I mean, you talked about your brother and you playing games, and you had a pretty big age difference
Mhm.
there. What sort of things and can that generational gap do to foster better understanding between different age groups?
Oh my gosh, so much. There are so many groups out there, like Warrior Gamer Foundation, like they're a nonprofit and they help connect veterans with other, people that are gamers and working through some of their trauma and PTSD through having a community and knowing that people are there that care about them and that want to be with them. There was an event the past couple of years here in Colorado that Warrior Gamer Foundation sponsors with Gold Star Gamers, which, if anybody's not familiar with them, they're an organization for young people, for kids that have lost a parent in military service. And Gold Star Gamers does a fantastic job of connecting, people existing in the military, people who have had military family members, with those kids to let them know you're not alone. And they do it through gaming. They do it through competition. They do it through, hey, let's sit down and play a game together. Like, and then they start talking and they start working through some of that trauma maybe that
Yeah.
they were going through from losing a parent. So we see that. We actually see, I've seen some great examples of where students, especially like middle school students, will come into senior living facilities and, we'll sit down with them and the smiles on everyone's faces are so inspiring and
Yeah.
so heartwarming when, these older people are having fun and they're connecting with a younger generation and they're seeing and they're having someone spend time with them. And then B, when the kids and these young people get to be the teachers
Yeah.
and they get to help educate older people on something and show them how to have fun. And, it breaks down those
Yeah.
barriers where they didn't have anything in common before.
Yeah.
So I think it's so wonderful and so lovely. And, I will say my household is kind of unique because my husband is 16 years older than me. So he is very much a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
I'm an elder millennial. And then I had my son at 17, so he's 17 years younger than me. He's very much a Gen Z person. And all of us interacted with gaming differently. So, whereas I am totally like the fantasy RPG nerd, like I will spend hours at Baldur's Gate
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
even like Cyberpunk and things like that. And my son is much more the FPS person
Hmm.
and, doing Overwatch and Fortnite and Call of Duty and etc. My husband was very much the, like Frogger and Pac-Man and Galaga and
Right.
etc. And it's so funny when we all get together because you can see kind of that generational difference in the experiences in the fact that when we play Pac-Man, my husband like knocks my socks off. Like he is totally the one winning. I'm dying in the first couple of rounds. But then if we sit down and we're trying to play, even like Jedi Survivor right
Right.
now, that's one that my husband and I are doing. he has me play because I know the reactions and the moves and the controller buttons better than he does, but he wants to be in the story and he wants to
Yeah.
learn about it and see it. So to me, it is truly one of gaming, esports, that experience is truly something that can break down those generational barriers.
Yeah, I like that. And just, even Chad's talking about how it all comes back to community, right? How
Mhm.
important that is, to this. And that's a huge part of, I think, what everybody wants to do and be involved in. And obviously bridging those gaps is huge as well. My parents, getting and playing, the Switch with their grandkids, right? That's a
Yes.
huge deal for them. They love it. And it's, I never thought that was going to be the case, growing up and being the only gamer in the house, So it's really cool to see and watch and I'm sure that's every other family is going through that same aspect. But
Mhm.
what advice would you give to educators and institutions that are looking to integrate gaming and esports into their curriculum or like extracurricular activities in their schools?
I would say don't be afraid of it. Like, there are many K-12 teachers that I've spoken with that are like, I play Candy Crush. I don't know that I can do all of this,
Right, right.
And but that's one of the things that we talk to them about. We're like, did you play Tetris? Did you play Words with Friends? Did you play
Yeah.
this? Well, yeah, then
Mm-hmm.
you're a
You're
gamer.
a
Like,
gamer.
it doesn't matter what kind of game you play. You're a gamer. You
Yep.
enjoy it. You know it's fun and you engage with it. And so I would say don't be afraid of it. Just jump in. There is always something new to learn. Bennett, you and I have been working in this industry for
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and I am constantly, every single day, finding something or surprised by something I read in Esports Insider or in the news. And I'm like, I had no idea that game did that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it is something that is so, ever changing. And I think part of that's just the world we live in now. But it is so ever changing that nobody knows it all. Nobody
Yeah.
is the penultimate expert in gaming and esports. So don't ever try to hold yourself to that standard. Just be willing to get into it
Yep.
and to learn. And I think educators are very uniquely positioned to be really great at that because educators are encouraging people to be lifelong learners,
Yep.
and they're encouraging people and students to find the learning experiences in everything. And so, physician, practice the medicine that you give
Mm-hmm.
out,
Mm-hmm.
that do it yourself, get in and learn, go read some articles, go watch some of the tournaments online, go visit
Yep.
something, reach out to your friends and your colleagues that maybe have done this or are in the process of doing it as well. And one of the things that I've always said too is don't be afraid to start small but anticipate the growth. So many programs are like, oh, well, if we can't have it in the basketball arena and on the Jumbotron,
Yep.
then we just can't do it right. No, like find a classroom and find 6 computers that you can cobble together and see the interest. And then
Yep.
also, your students are going to help you.
Yep.
Like your students know this world better than you do. Even if you've been a gamer your whole life, your students know this world better than you do. And allow them to shine, allow them to teach you, allow them to spread their wings and to have that ownership and to help, make this something that they do too. So listening to that feedback from students, getting them involved early, making a student leadership council or a student management organization, that can help give you that direction. And then you, as the adult or as the educator, as the administrator, can help remove the roadblocks that they're undoubtedly going to encounter. Let them tell you what they're passionate about. As far as like the interdisciplinary nature and like working it into curriculum, so many opportunities. And I think once you actually get the program started, once you start listening to students, they're going to tell you about things. Like they're going to tell you that Assassin's Creed, you learn history, and they're going to tell you
Yeah.
that Rocket League, you learn physics of
Yeah.
what a ball is going to do against the dome.
Yep.
So listen to them and watch what they're doing and then come up with those ideas of how to build it into your curriculum. I know like Dr. Eric Kemer at Butler University, like I believe he built it into English, and into literature studies. Like, I actually have worked with Sherry Jones from Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and she's been teaching ethics and philosophy with video games for like almost a couple decades
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But asking students to, like, okay, let's learn about Nietzsche and his ideology and things like that, and then let's go play this game and see, what do you pick up on now that you know about those philosophies or those ideologies? Like, are you looking at this game in a different way? My son and I, actually, we played Cult of the Lamb quite a bit last year. And I've had some interesting, be careful who you say that to, because I've had some K-12 educators be like, that is not a game I want to get into. And
Yeah.
no, you probably don't want to have it at your school. But between my son and I, we had some really interesting philosophical discussions
Yeah.
around what you would do as, a cult leader, or if you had these people that were looking up to you, and how would you get them to do things to make, your organization grow, and et cetera. So it's fascinating, all of the different facets that you can bring gaming into esports into, from an interdisciplinary perspective. And I'm a firm believer in listen to the students, and they're going to tell you what they want to learn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. They'll tell you what they want to learn. They'll be super passionate about it. They'll help get it started, continue to build. And I think to your point, you don't have to wait. You don't have to have all the nice things and everything be just right. Just get started. Start small and build from there. Whether that's semester, each other week, like whatever it may be, you just get started. And that's really the focus for most people is just actually doing it. Same thing with like streaming and content creation. Like, you can sit all day long and be like, oh, this video sucks, I gotta redo it and redo it and redo it. And like, at some point, you're just never gonna put it out. So you just gotta put it out. The first couple, probably 100 videos that you make aren't gonna be good, but it's okay. You're making them. You're learning as you go on. You talk about being a lifetime, learner. I've been at Full Sail for about 17 years, and that is a conversation I've had all the time, almost every day, with students. Is like this, technology-focused industries, you have to be a lifetime learner, because it's going to continue to change, and the esports world is no different. It changes sometimes every other week. It's a different thing. So this new thing happened. Now we got to pay attention. We're going in this direction now. Like, that's just such an important piece of not only the space, but the culture of that. And so I'm glad that you really, that you said that, because it is really important. And, obviously we're kind of running out of time here. We only have 5 minutes left. So I do want to jump to another question, because I think it's important to talk about your personal moments. But for gaming, like what have been some of your most memorable moments as a gamer?
Ooh. Oh man. In game or out of game?
Either, whatever it is, like.
Okay, so one that immediately pops up in my memory, and this is just a little bit more fun. Actually, it was not fun at the time. It was very aggravating. So I was playing Diablo 2. I had a laptop. I got to, and hopefully I'm not spoiling anything for anyone. That game's been out for,
I feel it's
20
time.
years.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. So spoiler warning if you haven't finished Diablo 2. But you get to the end and you have those 7 seals that you have to unlock, and you have to fight things that come out of some of them, and etc. So I was downstairs in my basement. It was late one night. I was so excited to be to the final battle there. And I had been playing probably, oh gosh, for like 3 or 4 hours at that point. And I unlocked all the seals. I made it through. I still had some health potions on me. I was getting ready to unlock the final seal, and my computer froze.
No.
I was like, no. So I had that moment. I also had a moment similar to that with Final Fantasy VII, the remake, where you get towards the end of the first release from the remake, and you're fighting Sephiroth, and there's like the only save point is like 3 hours back. And it's like, oh my God. Like I fought Sephiroth for probably 3 hours before I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Like, it's whatever. So that is one of the reasons why I absolutely love that Baldur's Gate, you can totally spam the F5 button
Yeah.
and just save, new
Safe.
save, new save. So yeah, I would say those would be some of my most memorable moments from the esports world and some of the work that I've done in that. I would say a couple of years ago, actually in 2022 in the spring, Phi Theta Kappa, if
Yep.
anybody knows that organization, National Honor Society for Junior Colleges. I was a part of that when I was going to community college, when I was a student, and loved everything that they did for students. Never got a chance to go to their annual conference because I just couldn't afford it. But when I was working at Dell, we had an Alienware loaner pool program, and one of my colleagues at Dell, his wife was very involved, was an employee of Phi Theta Kappa, and they were hosting their annual conference in Denver that year at the Gaylord of the Rockies. And they said, what if we did an esports tournament? And we were like, that would be amazing, but we've got 4 months to figure that out. But we did. We pulled it together. We utilized the Alienware loaner pool. We had 80 students sign up that were
That's
attending the
awesome.
conference to just be there. Many of them hadn't played before. We also had a lot of non-traditional students because, as you know, like community colleges
Yeah.
are a great way for non-traditional students, students that are older, coming back and changing skills to get involved. And many of them had never played. Like we were doing Rocket League because it's accessible. Many of them had never played before. And they were like, I wanted to sign up because my daughter plays this and I wanted to see what it was all about. Or I just wanted to challenge myself. I play it by myself, but this was a great way for me to, get involved.
Yep.
So we had that. We actually brought in students from the local Colorado community university and colleges from all over that helped run the event, that helped shoutcast, that helped set up the AV and do the graphics for it. So that was a great opportunity because we got to showcase them, but then also that was something they could add to their resumes
Yeah.
and something that, I wrote letters of recommendation for them for. And then, we also had some players as they got eliminated out of the tournament. Like there was one that I remember very clearly. She had been involved in esports, had been playing, had been trying her hand at shoutcasting. We had actually hired a professional shoutcaster here, Juggle God, Warren Hammond, if anybody knows him, from Denver. And she was like, I'd really love to be a part of this. And he
Yeah.
was like, well, come up on stage with me, shoutcast with me. And so she got actual film reel where she was
Yeah.
able to take that and put that on her resume and get that practice of shoutcasting in front of the live audience. So that was probably one of my most proud like esports
Yeah.
moments was the fact that we pulled that off and it was a very organic thing, but we were able to help provide that experience for so many students.
Yeah, I love that, and that it's great because I'm so happy you brought it up because that was definitely one of my questions that we didn't hit was about that event, and you hit it, so that's awesome.
Excellent.
Obviously, we have come to the end. We have run out of time, but I do want to give you one last opportunity. Like, what sort of message or advice would you like to leave with our listeners here, especially for those that share in your passion for gaming and education?
Yeah, it would be to keep your passions alive and let your geek flag fly. Like there's a giant community
Oh
of
yeah.
us all that love gaming, that love esports, that are passionate about it. And, it can truly be that community builder. Like, like chat said, it all comes back to community and it all comes back to having those engaging experiences. And, I don't know of a single gamer that prefers to just game in the closet by themselves.
Yeah.
They want to talk about it with people. They want to share those experiences. Yeah, they may be playing in their room by themselves, but they want to talk about it. They want to
Mm-hmm.
get out there and share those experiences with people. So remember that it's all about community. Remember that everybody can play. Help create opportunities for those that maybe are struggling to have opportunities to play and to get together with others. Lift those up that maybe you wish you would have had that help when you were younger, when you were getting into it. And if we can all do that, if we can all do that just a little bit, I think it's going to make the world a much brighter place and we're all going to have more fun gaming together.
I love that. And tell everybody where they can find you, how to get in contact with you, all that as well, Danielle.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is just daniellerourke.com. You can also find me at gamingculturist.com. I am Gaming Culturist on Twitter or X. I don't know what I'm supposed to call it right now. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Just look up Danielle Rourke, and I would love to connect with anybody and have more conversations and build that community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to Have Game Will Travel. We'll be back on October 5th. But until next time, have a great rest of your evening, and thanks for watching.